What's going on, YouTube? This is your boy Abe. What's your name?
Yo, what's up? Oh, you started? No, I was not listening. Go. Wait.
Welcome back. Welcome back, YouTube. This is your boy Abe, 24 Karat Black YouTube channel.
This is Cool KL.
Cool KL in the building. We in the building. It's Black History Month. We're going to continue on how we've been continuing on. Last week, KL came through. Who was you? Anyway, just go watch it. And, yeah. Just go watch it. And, you know what I mean?
I got one.
Most people get comfortable. They stop growing, they stop working on themselves, they stop stretching, they stop pushing themselves, and they end up becoming very cynical about life, and they throw in the towel.
Okay.
Yeah, we back.
So
We never left.
But anyway,
So
KL, he came through last week, gave us a good episode. It was on,
Bayard Rustin.
Okay, Bayard Rustin, yes. A very, very, very important person to know.
Following week before that, you did Claudette
Colvin. Yep, so get your history. Go back, watch those videos.
These are our unsung heroes.
Yeah, unsung heroes.
People that you may or may not have heard of,
Yeah.
but they definitely don't get the
they don't get the
shine that they should. So.
Yeah, at all. So we're going to give it to them here on this channel because it's deep in the fabric. And we want you to subscribe. We want you to like. We want you to go to our website. We want you to buy some merch. Because we are a clothing line, okay? But we represent black greatness. And it's 24 karat black for those who are new and don't know. 24 karat black, baby. Anyway, without further ado, we're going to talk about somebody that I feel, I mean, it was over 200 years ago this person existed, but I feel like
Jesus?
No, it wasn't Jesus. It wasn't Jesus. It wasn't Jesus. But I tell you this.
What, 200 years ago?
No, Jesus, 2,000 years ago.
Yeah.
They said. Right. Right. So, but this person right here is somebody that I feel like her story is still being told in many ways. Okay, it is seeped into the culture that we know today. And this person is called Sara Baartman. Sara Baartman was a black, well, she was an African woman that grew up in, I think it's called a Khoi area of Africa. You know, South Africa, don't, you know, if I'm wrong, you know, sorry. But she grew up and she had a hard life. Her husband, or well, first and foremost, her father was murdered. Her husband was murdered. They had a child together. The child died early. So as you can see early on, she dealt with a lot of trauma. But that's not even the worst part. Again, as I mentioned initially, Sarah had, she had, a voluptuous body. And, it was something that, after all of that trauma she dealt with mentally, eventually it led to a point where she went to work on a farm with some Dutchmen. Those Dutchmen fell in love with her attributes and they wanted to exploit her and take advantage of her. Very similar to the things that go on today, like with women that are exploited because of their physical attributes. Now, the difference between, the women today and, back then, they were actually using her as a slave. They exploited her. They moved her from South Africa. They took her to Paris and they put her on exhibit. Okay, she was in a cage and it was a spot called, I want to say, number 22 Piccadilly. So I don't know if that name rings a bell. There's a restaurant called Piccadilly. I don't know if there's any connection. But Sara Baartman was put on display there in a cage 4 to 8 hours a day. Men would come in, women, and she was an exhibit. She was like an animal. They would spit on her. They would pinch her. They tormented her.
All because of her body.
All because of her body. And, so many years, well, not many years, but a couple years went by. some issues started to arise with how she was being treated. There was a situation where the courts asked the owners of Sarah Baartman, who they said signed a contract, when, in all honesty, the area where she was from in South Africa, she didn't know how to read or write, and they didn't file anything. I mean, that wasn't the way that they operated, you know. So it all sounded fishy. Anyway, so the courts asked them to clean up the act. They couldn't treat her that way. They couldn't cage her. They had to give her the proper clothing. They had to do all this stuff. Long story short, the Dutchman sold her to an Englishman. The Englishman did more of the same, but worse. I mean, she was ran down. I mean, she was actually, they stated that she was actually, used for sex. And it was to the point where she eventually became sick, and she eventually succumbed to an illness which is unknown, because they're saying that she was a drunk and a prostitute, and she pretty much killed herself. This is how history is telling it. But they did, after she died, they dissected her body. There was like an autopsy done, and there was, they kind of try to lean more towards like a syphilis or a pneumonia. There was some inflammatory stuff there. Anyway, they can't pinpoint exactly how she died, but let history tell it was her fault. The reason why it's important that women know about Sarah Baartman is because the evils of men came in, exploited this woman for her body, and just used her up. And I see a lot of that today in many different ways. Whether you're stripping, whether it's prostitution, whether you're dating a man for money, whether you're enhancing your body. Instagram models. You're all on display like Sarah Baartman in many ways. And you're killing yourself and you're using yourself up to the point where when the male or the man that's exploiting you is done with you, it's over. And I can see that when I read the story and I learned about Sarah Baartman, I immediately thought about the queens of today. So I encourage you to go and actually research Sarah Baartman, because it is a very, very sad, very true, but very important story. The even worse part is she was such a she had such a unique look. And it was normal for the women from that area to have those attributes. And actually, after she died, there were more women that they did, exploit like that. But the sad part is they actually took Sarah Baartman's body and they plaster casted her body, and they sent it around to different museums, different places on exhibit, so people could actually see this. And they actually preserved her organs as well as her uterus, or her breasts, everything. They preserved it because they didn't really consider her human. They considered like more so like a freak of nature, and they wanted to kind of just tour her around and make money off of her even when she was dead. And the crazy part is, again, she died in, I want to say, 1816. Her body traveled all the way up until 2002. Okay, it took Nelson Mandela in 1994 to reach out to the French and demand that they release her body from a museum where it was being exhibited, and he demanded that they release her back to her home in South Africa, where she could have a proper burial. And if you look her up, you will see her actual body online. But fortunately, due to Nelson Mandela, 2002, she made it back home and they buried her.
That shit's crazy. But again, I noticed that something that the people from the past have in common with the people of today is either they were being exploited, or they exploit themselves. It's like a continuation. It's a
Yep.
pattern that you see here.
That's what I see. Yeah.
It's not, we do have freedoms, we do have rights, but not much changed.
Ain't much change, and that's the scary part.
But, it kind of boils down to something as simple as you as a female, and men, but in this case females, you can do anything. And so if you choose to exploit yourself for a camera, for likes on social media, then you subject yourself to that
that kind of stuff. And then maybe if you had a kind of understanding that this type of evil exploitation is rooted
Right.
from, some place like the Sarah Baartman story, then maybe you wouldn't do the things you do because you would better understand, okay, where this is going and where it came from. So educate yourself. Get woke, sister. Stop shaking your ass for cash.
No, don't. You don't have to stop.
Slow it down. How
Yeah.
about that? Slow it down.
Just do a little bit.
Just a little bit. Look, don't give them none. Okay, how about that for no cash?
No, but all seriousness though, we live in a very judgmental society,
Very.
and so that comes with the territory. Who are we to tell you what to do?
Right.
But know your history and know that this was started a long time ago.
Learn to love yourself too. And mentally, if you go through the trauma, seek help first. Okay. Don't let a man create your value and make you, have to go out and do all these things that enhance yourself because you're comparing yourself to other women or what men are telling you should look like, and you're getting all this stuff put in your body to enhance yourself and go out here looking like a freak of nature
Right.
when that's not really who you are. Sarah Baartman, it was natural. But, just love yourself. Love yourself, learn your history, connect with the history. Sarah Baartman was an unsung hero because she pretty much put herself out there on the line. She was helpless. To me, I feel sad for her because she was exploited. She went somewhere, she was working for some Dutchmen, and they kind of took advantage of her and misconstrued and kind of twisted up history and put their own narrative to things and, created some lies. And now you have the Sarah Baartman story. But you read between the lines, you'll really see what was going on. You'll know what was going on. So yeah, that's it, man. Black history, man. Do your research. And that's all I have to say, man, for this week. Sarah Baartman, unsung hero for Black History Month. Again, Black History is 365 days a year. It never stops. And subscribe. Go buy the merch. Stay golden.
Peace.
Peace.
For your dreaming. I